up, dog? What's happening with you? I never met you. I know your brother well, man.
Yes,
Ryan,
yes, sir,
man.
man.
Pleasure, man. Good to meet
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Yes, sir. Good to meet
Yes,
you,
sir.
family.
Good to meet you, too.
Yes. Oh. Like, so when you have a camp like this, are your coaches coaching all of these guys too, or yours specifically?
No, they're coaching everybody. It's a team.
Okay, I got you.
It's like a full-on team.
Gotcha.
I get a little more attention because I've been doing it for longer than a lot of guys, but
Right.
and obviously this camp is huge, so we've been a little bit more strategic compared to other ones.
Right. Yeah, because I always wonder, like you see boxing, the guys kind of have their own camp.
Yeah.
And I know you guys do have a team, so I always wondered how that worked from a coaching standpoint.
This is a real team. Like, we got all team practices.
Right.
I make a football analogy. I'm like, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't let some high school quarterback come train
Right.
them.
No, real talk.
They don't let some dude who played arena ball come in and play.
So why would you do that here?
Yeah, so like we don't just let anybody come down and train.
Right.
Because I've had people like, hey, can I come train? I'm like, hey, it's invite only.
Got you. Well, man, I appreciate you, brother. Yes, sir, man. I'll hit you up tomorrow. All right, my dog.
There it goes.
Yo!
I'm scared already.
I'm a lover. I'm a lover, brother.
What up, boy?
I'm over anybody.
What's up?
Sir.
Good to see you guys.
All right, folks.
Mike, what's happening?
Fight camp, man. Got this fight coming up.
You think?
I hope, yeah.
We hope,
allegedly.
right?
No, the fight's happening. Obviously, where we are right now, there's a lot of speculation, but the fight is on June 29th. It's happening.
Hold up, limitless, niggas to me cap pinning it. I fought the here to witness it. Got my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling got me up. On the mission got me up. Knowing me, I got the key. Only vision I can trust. Limitless, niggas to me cap pinning it. I fought the here to witness it. Got my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling got me up. On the mission got me up. Knowing me, I got the key. Only vision I can trust. Limitless, niggas to me cap pinning it. I fought the here to witness it. Got my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling got me up.
Welcome to The Pivot, a part of Fanatics. We have Michael Chandler of Strikeforce, Bellator, now in the UFC. I mean, you were a seasoned champion, lightweight champion, Division I, All-American in wrestling, walk-on guys, like walk-ons, undrafted guys. None of these dudes know about that hard road. People like me and MC got to take.
What is that? What y'all do?
We started at the bottom. People are like, what's your name? I'm like, hey, man, you might know someday.
But we got Channing Crowder, Fred Taylor. I'm Ryan Clark. Thank you guys for being here. Bro, how did you find out the presser in Ireland was canceled with Connor McGregor?
So I was actually up late that night because the fights were on the East Coast. So I didn't get into bed till like 12:31 because I wanted to watch Islam versus Poirier, watch that fight. So I'd probably fallen asleep for maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and I woke up to my phone buzzing, and it was Hunter Campbell, who, everybody knows Dana White's the face, but Hunter Campbell's kind of the guy behind the guy, handles a lot of stuff in the UFC, and he called me and let me know, hey, it's looking like this thing isn't going to happen. And then, so obviously I laid there and thought about it for quite a while. And then the next morning, we got on call and he said, it's not happening.
We talk to fighters all the time. Like, because y'all try to peak.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You train to peak. And then, like, thinking about that when you're laying in bed, like, am I peaking for no goddamn reason? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, am I?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a canceled presser, not that big of a deal, right? It happens, but it's the layers in which, okay, if a pressure is canceled, is there something else wrong? Is there something going on? And obviously then immediately speculation starts going all over the place in 2024, social media, all that stuff. And I just kept resting in the fact that I know I can only control what I can control. And I've been doing that now for a year and a half with this whole fight. If you've been following it with all the different stuff and all the different dates that have gone on and the dates that were supposed to happen and didn't happen, and now here we are fighting in June of 2024. So really it was just kind of a, you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Yeah. And you're just like, dude, this isn't about me. I'm not in control, and we're gonna roll with it.
Right, and even with that though, and then you turn around and you see Conor just wide open in the club. I mean, he getting it in. Do you think he's taking it as serious as you?
Man, I tell you what, there's a couple different schools of thought. Obviously, would you ever put it past Conor? No, I think we can all, if you've seen Conor, you would not put that past Conor. But if you saw the way Ryan Garcia did what Ryan Garcia did, you know, and there's all kinds of different, you know, throwing people off the trail,
Right.
All kinds of different publicity stunts, if you will. I'm training, whether I see Conor in the club every single day or I don't see him tweet or do an interview and he looks bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, he looks the best he's ever been, I'm training the exact same way. And I train the exact same way, whether I was fighting all those guys that you never heard of, that never made a name for themselves, all the way to the #1 guy in the world in Charles Oliveira at the time, to Connor McGregor, the biggest name that we have seen. I trust my process, and my process does not change. And if I don't waver from said process, then I know I can step in the octagon and do what I have to do.
Mike, you mentioned the year and a half. When I used to sit with Daniel, we would talk about how steadfast you were in fighting Connor McGregor. You guys go do the Ultimate Fighter, and there was so much tension. And at that point, everyone was chomping at the bit for that fight. We're waiting for him to get in USADA. All of these things are happening, and the entire time you're like, this fight's gonna happen. I'm gonna be there. How much thought have you given to what does Michael Chandler do if this thing he's been waiting on a year and a half doesn't happen?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely times, you know, obviously I always put on a smile. I always, I remained faithful in the whole scenario. I also had enough. You got the public perception, and then you have the actual people in the trenches, right? The guys on the phone calls with Dana and Hunter, management, the guys behind the closed doors having the conversations, and I was getting enough reassurances that this was the route to continue to follow. I was never offered another fight. I was ranked top 5 at the time. I'm top 5 guy in the world. Every single guy from 1 to 10. All the guys right around me, number 6, number 7, number 4, every single one of them getting booked up. Every single one of them fighting each other. Every single one of them getting booked, getting calls. There was probably 2 other scenarios where, you know this in mixed martial arts, similar to like this. If this fight fell apart, UFC is going to start calling around, hey, would
Volk's
you be
already
available?
raised his hand.
Right, yeah, would you be available? I never got one of those calls, hey. And even if it was the UFC wanting me to get off the Connor McGregor versus Chandler bandwagon, they could have very easily been like, hey, this guy's hurt. We need you to step in. You want to step in? I never got one of those phone calls. So that to me says it's the fight that the UFC wants. It's obviously the fight that I want. And it's the fight that Conor wants. And we did the Ultimate Fighter. If we don't fight, then it makes the Ultimate Fighter null and void. And it kind of takes away the mystique of what the Ultimate Fighter process is. But I have my days. I'm human. I am prone to wander. I have my moments. Especially when you're lined up and connected to a guy who is a social media certified lunatic when it comes to,
Right.
Every single weekend there's a fight going on. It's like, I'll fight Adesanya. I could, behead him. And then he talks about a 145 pounder. Then he talks about the BMF. And then he's talking about everybody else but me.
Right.
And that's all mind games. And I just looked at it as if, hey, man, I am who I am, and here I am, and you ain't gonna stop me.
We all think we know, but why Conor McGregor for you?
Why for me? When you get into the sport of mixed martial arts, you get into athletics in general, right? You want the biggest games, you want the biggest opponents, you want the brightest lights, you want it's obviously the financial incentive. I want to create a life for my family, so that's part of it. But really, when I got into the sport when I was 22 years old, I wanted to become the #1 guy in the world and have the biggest fights that you could possibly have. Conor McGregor checks that box of the biggest platform, the brightest lights, the biggest name, and everybody who was able to throw shade at being on the outside, throwing rocks and stones at me, saying, I can't believe you're waiting, 10 out of 10 of those people, 100% of those people would be doing the exact same thing. And I can have a little smirk on my face saying, I know that you would wait, and I know that you would wait, but I didn't need to say that because that's just not who I am.
Well, you talking about the Ultimate Fighter, where you were there every single damn match, and you were amping your play. Conor was, that motherfucker wasn't even showing up. Like, you know what I'm saying? And then it's bro, I drove my truck around in front of your house, went around the loop, came back to find a spot, and I looked over and I was like, fuck, that's Michael Chandler right there. And you were waiting outside for me, and I was like, oh shit, I was on the phone with my wife, and I was like, I gotta go. Like, and we hung up. You're so humble. And on the other side, I would say not humble.
I'm sure there's a little humility in there somewhere, but he doesn't show it very often.
But like to be, I don't want to say the underdog or just the good guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that word "good guy," you know, it gets thrown around a lot, or you know, and some people love me for me and who I am and how I operate, and some people hate me because of it, right? They want to see me fall, or they want to see my skeletons, or they want to find dirt on me, or they, you know, and that's completely fine. I signed up for that by being in the public eye. But yeah, this good guy versus the bad guy, that's a narrative that the media and the fans have kind of taken on. More than anything, man, I just know that I've earned this. This is where I never thought I deserved to be for so many years until I was finally able to do that inner work to realize, wait a second, this is supposed to work out, and it's not just going to work out kind of good. It's going to work out better than good. So I've just watched that and how God's had me in the palm of His hand my entire career with every single top of the mountain and every single valley. So it's a cool storyline that people love to talk about, but more than anything, I just look across the cage right now and I can see him. He's just a man who hasn't earned what he has gotten anymore. He created the life, he earned it all the way up until these last couple years, and then when it comes to actually putting in the work, the guy who has left no stone unturned in hand-to-hand combat since he was 14 years old, and then the guy who really caught lightning in a bottle and was able to do really great things about it, I'm betting on that little 14-year-old who hasn't stopped.
You gotta love that, right? You have to love it. I think what stood out for me in that was that you said, you know that God has you.
Yeah.
I listened to a sermon this past weekend. It was titled "I Am," you know, and really knowing who God is, understand who God is, and God knowing who you are, and knowing that you'll always be blessed as long as you know Him, that you never have to worry for anything, right? So I just want to add that part. But I want to go back to what RC mentioned, from walk-on to All-American, coming from those humble beginnings. What sort of stuff did like a wrestler have to go through in college as a college walk-on that was, you look back on now and maybe you can say, wow, I'm here.
You know, and I think the biggest aspect of it was realizing, because, you know, you can put yourself in that 18-year-old self, right? You got your friends, you got your family, you know, you got like your teammates, right? That's your world, right? In me, it was High Ridge, Missouri, this little town outside of St. Louis, Missouri, and my friends, my high school coaches, my family, that's all I had. So to me, that was the world, and almost all of them, they loved me, they cared about me, they wanted the best for me, but almost all of them said I was crazy. Like, you have a scholarship opportunity for this Division III school, or you have a scholarship opportunity to this JUCO. Why don't you just take one of these offers? Why are you going to go walk on to Mizzou? Because there's only a couple things that could happen. It might work out for you, and it's this small, but you're probably going to ride the bench. You're going to quit. You're going to be a training partner. You're going to get beat up for 5 years and wish that you would have just went to one of these other schools. But so when I got there, it was more. I think that was one of the only times in my life that it was about proving people wrong. Because since I have matured since then, it's not about proving people wrong, it's about proving my supporters right. But at that point in time, I remember I remember my mom and dad had this silver minivan, and we pulled up to Baker Park, it was called Baker Park, was our dorm room that we were gonna go in, and I'm watching all these guys walk in, and I'm like, oh, that's that state champ from Illinois, and oh, there's a state champ from Missouri, and there's that kid, I heard about him, saw him at Senior National. He was a state champion from California, the hardest state, right? And I'm just this little old runner-up kid who's walking on. Everybody else got 4 sets of workout gear. I got 2 sets of workout gear. Coach didn't know my name. So it was, but I think it just, all I cared about was the work. And it was an opportunity. It doesn't matter if you start at the bottom or you start at the very top. Every single day is a new opportunity. Correct. And I think I had that mentality, and I'm still that exact same way on the cusp of the biggest fight of the last decade, possibly.
How often do you talk to that 14-year-old in preparations for time like this?
Often, man. And I hated him for a very long time. I hated him. I hated who I grew up around. I hated. You know, there was this disdain, right? Like, why would you tell me to think so small? Why would you tell me that don't go outside those county lines because you're going to fall flat on your face? Why would you tell me that I was only created for this when God's promises say I was created for this and way up there where you can't even see, right? And I had to make amends to that 14-year-old boy, to that 18-year-old boy who walked on to Mizzou, and those things that were going on inside of my mind. And, you know, I kind of look at it like some of these demons you're able to slay and get them out of your life, and some of these dragons you're able to slay, and some of them you just get really good at pushing into a corner, right? And you get really good at managing them. And as you grow, you look at it and say, I would not be here if it weren't for you. And I know you were holding me back, and I know you stymied me and stifled me, and you tripped me and you held me down, but I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. So I always talk about being a small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things, and I've never gotten rid of him, but I've gotten really good at duct taping him to the basement of my mind, you know, and every now and then I hear from him, and now I've gotten good at saying, hey, we're on the same team here. I know you're trying to do what you think is right, whether it's protection or whether it's safety or whether it's, you know, lack or less than. You're just doing what you think you're supposed to do, but I was created for more. We're past that.
Right.
In Bellator, you had a good run. And I think there was at one point in your career, you went without a win for 688 days. And for someone who has worked from the bottom, and like myself, once I got to the NFL and being an undrafted free agent, when there were moments where I wasn't as good as I'd worked to be, where I didn't play as well as I'd hoped to play, that guy came back up. And you start to think to yourself, see, this is why they didn't draft me. Or I don't have this talent, or I'm not athletic in this way, I'm not explosive in this way. You mentioned duct taping your demon. How were you able to work through that and now get to a point to where you are able to receive God's blessing in the way that he'd have you to receive them?
Yeah, I've just watched it play out so many times in my life that if a bad thing happens to you but a good thing comes from it, was it really a bad thing? You know, there was nothing positive about losing the title to Eddie Alvarez. Immediately started telling myself lies and started believing the lies of all the doubters who said he's not that good, or hey, he's not, just like what you were saying, he's not championship caliber, right? You're like, no, man, I'm not. Then you have that first loss, and then immediately woke up the next morning like, I knew it, man. It was only a matter of time before I was exposed, and I'm not that good. Right? And then I have my second loss. That leads into the second loss, and it leads into the third loss. There was nothing good in that time whatsoever until I was able to turn that pain into realizing that this was part of my journey. This is what I needed to go through. And really, I really did put way too much of an emphasis on the physicality of the sport and not enough emphasis on the mindset of the sport. Because I would outwork everybody. I would show up early. I would stay late. I would be the guy you knew if you called me and you were on my team or you were on one of my coaches, I would answer, and I would skip whatever I was doing and I would be there. I was that guy. But all I was really doing was building up a bigger, stronger, faster, subpar version of the man that I was supposed to be, because I wasn't really taking control of my thoughts, taking control of my mindset, visualizing, and really truly believing and speaking beautiful things into my life. It was just about the work. And now I realize, as a 38-year-old man, been doing this for 24 years, it's about the work. The work is extremely important, but the belief and the mindset and your self-concept is the most important thing about it. And that was when I realized, okay, it's time to start taking stock in what's going on, the battle that's going on in between my ears, or else I need to just quit this athletics thing and go get a job somewhere.
Bro, that's a hell of a conversation. When did you know you were physically capable of being as bad as you are and being a champion? And how far off was the mental side? Because physically, I saw you choke the shit out of somebody a number of times. I was watching videos. But then from saying, okay, I can do this physically, to the mental side of, oh, okay, now I know there's a next level to this.
Yeah, I mean, it was after my second loss in a row. You know, so at that point it had been probably a year and a half since I had won a fight, but then I still ended up losing the next fight. But maybe I needed to, right? But I really started doing some work. I mean, I saw a sports psychologist for the first time and started really just peeling back the layers of of the brain, of visualization, of realizing that every time I put on a YouTube video that will inspire me or motivate me, or every time I pick up a book, or every time I read someone's autobiography, or every time I look into and peel back the layers of the struggles that people have gone through and how they have overcome things, that was just like putting a barbell on my back and squatting it 1,000 times, like I have done so many times, right? Once I started to realize the reps in the gym were important, but not as important as the mental reps, and that's when everything started clicking for me. And then I think it was also just the maturation process. You know, I had just gotten married. I literally, promised my wife I was gonna provide for her, and then I end up losing my next fight, and then losing 2 more fights in a row. So I think that lit a fire under me, making that promise, and then all of a sudden, wait a second, I had a career when we started dating, and then now it looks like this thing might just crash and burn here. I think there was that accountability of a man stepping up and realizing, hey, there's something I got to do.
Talking about though, she had to believe in you, bro. You emailed your wife 2 years to get a date.
Yep.
I don't know what sort of impression a human has to make on another human where you send 2 years worth of emails. You couldn't even text.
Hey, no, yeah, you're right. Well, it wasn't even just 2 years worth of emails. It wasn't like we were emailing back and forth. It was, I would send her an email and she would wait 2 or 3 months to respond. And then I would wait 2 or 3 minutes to respond to that. And then she would wait 2 or 3 more months to respond. But yeah, I mean, yeah.
You were shooting.
I was, man. I was like, I told you the story. I knocked out this tooth my freshman year of college, and I saw this dentist named Dr. Willett, and I saw this cute girl on the wall in his dentist's office, and I already knew who he was, because my Bible study leader, he was my Bible study leader. Bible study leader. So I already knew the reputation that he had, and I'm like, man, if this dude, if she's gorgeous, and if she's anything like that guy, like, I want to marry her. And then I just, once again, like how it was all perfectly orchestrated. I was around 20 of her friends, never met her, but her name just kept getting popped up. And I was like, man, I'm going to marry this girl. And then I remember going to a birthday party at her dad's house. He still lives there, and there's a cool little pond in the back. And I went to a birthday party there. She wasn't there, and I said, man, someday I'm going to be fishing on this pond. And I ended up marrying this girl, and I now fish on that pond. So it's just, you call it serendipity, call it God, call it vision, call it, discernment. I don't know. But yeah, she believed in me, and she always has. And she was with me during that time. And without her, I don't know if I would have gotten through it. And
Mike,
without her, I don't know if I got through any of this.
I call that persistence.
Yeah, I call it persistence. I mean, yeah. It's
a tab of harassment.
Hey, I do say, oh, you want to hear the story? All right, listen, number one, I promise I'm not a stalker. Number two, because it's definitely a stalker story, but I don't know, man, it just, it worked out.
You have to be kind of, a little bit aggressive, kind of passive aggressive. You accomplish what you set out to do.
Yeah.
But going back to the mental part that you mentioned to Channing, and questioning yourself when you made those promises to Bree when she was your girlfriend prior to getting married, and going through the mental stuff, because we all go through it. Like if we lose a game, we come home feeling a certain type of way. You lose a bout, I'm sure you come in feeling a certain type of way. As a professional fighter, how do you balance your professional career with the responsibilities of being a husband and even a father to, what is it, Hap?
Happy days.
Happiness.
Luckily, it's been pretty easy in a lot of ways, and I think a lot of it has to do with my mentality, because I think I make the requisite sacrifices, and I take the steps needed to be dad when I need to be dad and be completely selfish. I'm down here in Florida right now. My family is 1,000 miles away, and I am okay with being selfish in order to be selfless, to be able to provide for my family, right? And luckily, my Bree, my wife, supports me in all of that. She steps up when she needs to, and single mom right now for 8 weeks, if you will. And they get to enjoy it. They were actually here last week, so I was able to, Ace for the first time got to see me train, and they were rolling around on the mats, and we got some cool pictures and stuff. These things that are just them getting to see what daddy does, right? But the hardest part is when you come home and you feel like you let people down, right? You make all the sacrifices, all the time away, all the travel, the moments, the precious moments that we're missing with our children, the precious moments that you're missing in your marriage. And in a lot of ways, you know, Bree has to go into a different mindset whenever I go into training camp. And it sounds crazy, but we are in love and we are perfect for each other, but her, the day after a fight, is different than the girl that I left 2 months prior, because she has to step up, and she has to put her guard up, and she has to take on 2 roles, and she has to do all these things. And she is supporting me, but she also has to compartmentalize as well and kind of go into single mother mode. And then we have to kind of come back and rekindle that fire and rekindle that love. And it doesn't mean that we don't love each other. It doesn't mean that there's any kind of problems in our marriage, but we've had to figure out how to get back to that one, you know, because she has been one there and I have been one here, and then we have to be 2 becoming 1 again, you know. So I think that's probably the most interesting, delicate dance of it. And then obviously coming home with stitches and black eyes and all that stuff. But I look at that as if my sons are learning subconsciously that sometimes life is going to beat you down, and you're still going to have a smile on your face no matter what. Right. You're going to have physical, invisible wounds. You're going to have invisible wounds. You're going to go through tough times, but through it all, showing resilience. And I think that's one of the most interesting parts of it.
And I love how you said rekindling, because your 2 hands touched.
Yeah, we got to rekindle that.
Is that a rekindle?
We got to rekindle. Yeah.
Fight night? Because your ass, even if you get your ass whooped, you still.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But, bro, to that point, like even you're saying the fight side and the family side, and like you say, you and your wife have to get that connection back. What's like? Because it gets to me when I see a fighter lose and his kids are crying. Yeah. And I'm like, they don't know there's another side to daddy not winning. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What part of that gets to you? And after a fight, if you do lose, do you look over to the family and is it like, oh, or is it like, hey guys, we're good? Like, what's that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is, and it sounds, it's hard when I say it, because when I do say it, it sounds like I don't care or I'm apathetic about success or winning. But these days, man, if you know you do everything right and you put all the time in, sometimes you're just going to lose, you know, and no matter what, the sun will rise the next day, and my God still loves me, my family still loves me, and I still love me. So yeah, I can be really, really down about it, and I can act like this next fight is the biggest fight of my career, which it is, and it has lifelong implications, which it does, but it's still just a thing that I do. It's not who I be. So I think my son Hap went to 2 fights ago, and I knocked out Tony Ferguson, so I won that one, which is great. He's coming to this one. I plan on winning, but, you know, who knows? It's a fight, right? I think if my son or sons ever do see me lose, I think it's going to be important. It's going to be very important in that moment to act a certain way, to operate in a certain way, so that they know that you are going to lose. Like, it's part of life. I wouldn't be where I am today without all of the losses. But obviously, mixed martial arts is a little bit different. It comes with the blood and the cuts and maybe even getting knocked out or your arm broken or whatever it may be. It's a bunch of different scenarios, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful sport, and it's a beautiful opportunity. And I think just being able to share that with them, win, lose, or draw, it's memories that are going to last a lifetime.
One of my favorite moments is you actually got to meet my son in Phoenix, and that was when you fought Tony Ferguson. I love to call it a front kick, but it was a front punt or kickoff. Yeah, like whatever it was, it wasn't Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida. It wasn't none of those.
It wasn't mixed martial arts. It was more football than it was mixed martial arts.
It was more football than anything. But to me, the most beautiful part of that night is after you knock him out, you do a million backflips, but you jumped on the cage and you said, "Where's my son?" Part of what we haven't spoken about is that you have 2 African-American sons that you and your wife, Bree, adopted. Tell me a little bit about that moment, man, getting on that stage, calling for your son, and having him have the opportunity to celebrate that with you.
Man, that was one of the greatest moments of my life. You know, I think part of it you know, it's just like probably getting done with a game and it was a close game and all of a sudden it's over and there's no chance that you can lose, right? The clock hits 0-0-0, there's no chance that you can lose because up until that moment, if it's a close game, you're just one play away from losing. You're just one punch away from losing. And I think that's why people can talk about celebrations in mixed martial arts and maybe this guy overdid it or he shouldn't have done this, but the amount of pressure all the way up until the moment that ref pulls you off or the last bell rings, there's always the chance of losing. So with Hap coming to that fight, it was more pressure than I had ever felt. And after that, I thought, I was like, man, I don't know if I'll ever have my kids come to the fight again, just because it was a lot of pressure, even though it worked out great, so maybe he's a good luck charm. But yeah, all I thought about in that moment was I wanted to share it with him. And I wanted to share it with my wife, of course, and my family, but I wanted to share it with him because Bree makes sacrifices big time, right? But she's a big girl. She's a strong woman, an independent woman, a career woman. You know, part of the reason why it took me so long to court her and get a date with her was she didn't need me. She didn't want a relationship, right? She was married to medicine. She loved her career and she wasn't looking for anything. And she's still that independent woman. So I don't mean to say that me being away from her doesn't affect her in ways, but you know, October 26th of 2017, I made a promise to this young man that I was going to take care of him for the rest of his life. And part of that is Daddy can't be there all the time. So the sacrifices that we have had to make and the moments or even the things that I have missed, the time that I've been away, the bedtimes that I've missed, I pray that it's all going to work out and he's going to be a great young man because of it, but it's still that little bit of burden that you feel. So to be able to have that moment where not only was it a spectacular knockout and it's a win and finally I can't lose anymore, my first thought was that little boy and that he had a bright green shirt on. I knew what he was wearing and I was just looking for him all around the crowd. I jumped on the cage like 3 different areas and beating my chest and where's my son? I wanted to see him so bad. He was the first thought that I had after the backflips, of course. But you know, it was the first thought that I had and I wanted to have that moment and I wanted to embrace him because finally I was done being a fighter. And I wanted to be a dad. I was done being the guy chasing this dream with this job to do. This cage door closes and I gotta go do this job and I've been doing it now for the last 8 weeks, 10 weeks and Daddy's been gone. And now I can just come home with you and all I wanna do is wrap my arms around you. And I was able to do that. They brought him up and put him on the cage and he got inside the cage and it was one of the greatest moments of my life.
Yeah, we texted about this a little bit, you and I, in setting this up. You know, and I was like, hey man, if you ever want to talk to me about something like this, I'm here. You know, you did an interview and they asked you about raising your boys. And I felt, one, you gave an answer of love, but you also gave an answer that I felt like you couldn't know the counter to or the opposing sides of unless someone else had talked to you about it. But you were asked about raising your boys and you said what any father would say. You said, I'm not raising black children, I'm raising my children. And I think for children who are adopted or children who are in the system, they probably long to hear anyone say that they're mine and my. And then obviously because of social media, because of sort of the toxicity of the world we live in, you faced a lot of backlash for that answer. What did you learn from the fallout of answering that question by saying, I'm not raising black children, I'm raising my children?
Yeah, I mean, I think that soundbite obviously can be clipped, that little 5 seconds can be clipped and of course, I would say, wait a second, but if you dive deeper into it, right? It was all about their skin color is not the most important thing about them, right? And maybe I'm wrong for saying that. Maybe other people would disagree with me. The most important thing about a man is being a man and the virtues and the things and the characteristics about being a good man. Obviously, with the world that we live in, it was taken and it was put everywhere, and it wasn't that bad. It was a little tough for a second because I think more than anything, I'm a guy who lets the work do the talking, right? I let my I let the fruits of my labor do the talking more than me telling you about it. So I could have gone into 25 different things that my wife and I talk about, the decisions that we have made, the lifestyle that we have, the friends that we have, the school that we chose, and all of these different things that we make sure we go above and beyond to make sure that our children feel as comfortable as possible. But I'm just not that kind of guy, right? Normally I'm just like, hey, this is what it is. I'm gonna let the work talk. And someday when my sons are grown men and they are changing the world, that will be the work talking, right? It was an interesting scenario because you can talk about, I'm not a hard worker, you can talk about I'm not this, but obviously when it comes to that, and it's such a hot button issue, and you don't really truly know my heart or the day in and day out and what happens between the four walls of my house and the community that we live in, I could see how it was taken out of context, and it was tough because it was I feel like it was maybe something that I deserved because of the words that were said and how it was clipped, but also with people not truly knowing the whole story.
Yeah, I when we texted about it, I wanted to make sure, I was like, bro, I've seen you with your kids. They're your kids. And I know the type of love they get, the type of upbringing that you're giving them. And I think they're so blessed to have both you and Bree. From a black man's point of view, when we talk about like just the sound bite, and I listened to it all, I read it all. From a transcription standpoint, there are things that we encounter because of our skin color that people who are not African American can't necessarily understand. And that's why I thought you gave the best answer you could give without having the conversation. With someone who has been pulled over and been scared, with someone who has been called the N-word, with someone who was thought of less than strictly based on the color of our skins. For you just thinking with your heart. And you're preparing the world as a man who loves all people, when you have to prepare your sons for a world that hates them just because of the color of their skin. And I think that's just it's a difficult conversation because we talk about it. Older people in our lives did it with fear, which I don't think was the correct way, right? They made us scared of things. And I love the fact that you don't want your babies to be scared, and you're telling them one day you're gonna change the world. But I do believe that was part of like the backlash of it. It was that people who have been through the hurt that we have sometimes because of the color of our skin was like, man, you may be doing them a disservice because your love is so deep by not teaching them the hate of the world. And I've seen you, man, like you love this country. Like we talked about it at the White House. We don't want to be anywhere else, but there are uglier parts of it.
And just really to piggyback on what RC is saying, there are so many conflicted and hateful and rude people in this world, man. Your love for your kids is your love for your children. It goes back to, what Channing was joking around about rekindling. We move around a lot to do this show. And that's time away from our kids and families. When you're there, it's about being present. When we look at little black boys in our community and how we came up certain demographics, there are a lot of times the father figures aren't present. The head of the households aren't present. So no matter what those people out there are spewing and all of the crap that they try to throw up against the wall, try to make some shit stick, you're present for your kids. You love your kids with all your heart. Your faith is amazing. That's all that fucking matters.
Yep.
The skin color does not reflect the type of love or the type of person you're trying to, or type of love you're trying to instill in them so they can become the type of people that can love back, give that love back to the world. So keep standing on business, bro, like I'm sure you know how. And for me, those stupid people out there.
Shit, if I was him,
that's how I see it.
Freddie T, if I was them, I'd have been like, fight me then.
I mean, and granted, not to really just toss that type of language out, but sometimes you look.
Yeah.
And I know you know how to stay focused, you're disciplined, and those people, they just don't get it.
I do, but I think just because I'm able to handle it and I'm strong and it's not gonna stop who I am or it's not gonna, I'm not gonna spend 3 weeks being depressed about the backlash, doesn't mean that I'm not curious. I'm not always trying to learn. My wife and I don't have numerous conversations all the time within our household, with our black friends, with our mixed families, with the people in our lives, and the education and the open line of communication that we have, and the curiosity, and not really even the curiosity, the conviction that we have, that we want to, and that these blessings have been bestowed upon us, and there's work that needs to be done, there's education that needs to be done, there is exploration that needs to be done, and obviously part of it too is, if I would have done that interview and my sons are 14 and 11,
different conversation.
It's a little bit different, right? I've got a 2-year-old and I've got a 7-year-old, right? So maybe that question being answered to me 5 years from now, or my son Hap now is 7, so we're getting toward that direction. But he's always just been a little kid, right? And then Ace is just a little kid. So there's always the age-appropriate scenario too.
No, that's hard.
I think the questions come because it's crazy to say it's not normal for non-black people to be raising black young men. And that's why the question was presented to you. And I understand your answer to what you're saying. I'm just raising my babies. But the adoption process, and I want to say, how did it go, and choosing? And that's the difference between having and adopting. You chose to raise 2 black young men. How was that process between you and your wife?
So the interesting thing was, my wife has wanted to adopt an African-American boy since she was a teenager. My wife has had that on her heart since she was a teenager. And I remember she used to do inner-city mission work. She used to go to Jamaica on mission trips with her dad. Everybody knew she was going to do it eventually, someday. And she always said, if I marry a good man, I want to do this, right? And I remember, I'll never forget where we were. We were in San Diego, California. We were just dating. We were laying on a blanket at a dog park, and she told me this dream and this vision that she has had since she was literally a teenager, since she was like 16 years old. And I always make the joke, like, hey, I'll tell her anything to marry me, right? I'll say yes to anything. But really, obviously, that was when the process really kind of started, and that's when it first started. That was the first time I heard it, and it was something that was kind of foreign to me. I never really thought about that. I always just thought I was going to have, my babies that kind of look like me, or they're white kids with blue eye or brown eyes, blue eyes, whatever. But that's when it all started, and then I needed a little bit of time to come around to it. Was it going to be the right time? And then I needed, because obviously adopting your first child is a little bit different. I mean, traditionally, if you will, a lot of people are like, hey, we have our own biological children, if you will, and then maybe adopt a little bit later. But for us, we wanted to adopt right away. So I needed a little bit of time to kind of get my head wrapped around all of it, and it was actually the perfect little bit of delay that made it so that we ended up with our son Hap. But it was about a year-long process with all the paperwork and the background checks and all of that stuff, and it worked out perfectly. It was a 6-minute match. Six minutes. And I'm always reluctant to say that, because there's so many people in adoption who wait years and years and years and never get chosen, or years and years and years and never get matched. And our first one was 6 minutes, and our second one was a couple days, and that's when it's just perfectly orchestrated and how it was supposed to be.
I got to sit in front of them at the weigh-ins, the ceremonial weigh-ins in Phoenix, and one, he's a superstar, I think, because everybody follows you on social media, so everybody knew who. Yeah, he is though.
Stud.
Bro, everybody knows who he is.
Just living, man.
Everybody knows who he is, and that was the one thing. I was there with Jordan. Like, that was the one thing I took away, is like, there's love. You can see that he feels loved. You can see that you guys feel love from him, but more than anything, you give it. And to me, that's the most important thing. And even when we got the text about, I was like, bro, I know you. And I've had conversations with people about, like, that dude. I was like, you can talk to somebody else about it, not him. But you mentioned that your wife said that she married a good man, right? Obviously, she married a good man. She went with her plan. I'm going to ask if your wife married a smart man, right? Because you come over from Bellator, and it was like, you know what? We're not going to give Mike any warm-up fights, right? We're just going to put him in there with Dan Hooker, and then he's going to fight Charles Oliveira, and he's going to fight Justin Gaethje, and he's going to fight Tony Ferguson, he's going to fight Dustin Poirier. And you know, you became like my dog because you'd always come on the show. I just loved you. And I was like, I wonder if Mike's gonna block tonight. Or maybe, you know, maybe at some point, Mike could do something defensively. You know, maybe he'll grab. He's a Division I All-American wrestler. Maybe he'll put this guy up against the cage. Nah. Mike gets to freaking New York in Madison Square Garden. He says, we're just gonna stand in the middle of the octagon and we're gonna punch each other in the face. And guess what? When you punch me really hard, I'm gonna do something even stupider. I'm gonna go, come on. Like when they close that cage, who do you become, bro?
Man, the best version of myself when it comes to the beast that I was created to be, right? I think what you just kind of laid out is I really do think, and I'm very, very blessed and fortunate of this, is I've been able to live on kind of both ends of the spectrum, right? Here, outside of the confines of competition, I try to operate with integrity and love and try to be a nice guy and a cool guy, but then when that cage door closes, I'm just a stone cold killer who actually relishes in the chaos, who loves the animosity inside of the fighting. Now at the press conference, I'm not the best trash talker. I don't really like that trash talk animosity stuff, but when it comes to hand-to-hand combat and 2 arms and 2 legs and a job to do in front of me, I was created for that. And yeah, I think you use the word smart. I don't think it's always smart. But I also think I've won a lot of fights by having that style, you know? So people can look at the record and say, well, you lost to these guys and you beat these guys. So what you're doing hasn't worked more times than it has worked. But it sure has worked a lot of times. Yeah. And it sure is fun. And we sure do get some people talking.
Well, it wasn't fun for me. That was my first UFC match.
Which one was it, Gaethje or Poirier?
Poirier, 281, right?
Yeah.
New York.
Yeah.
Yeah, so RC, he brought this sport into my life, like real heavy. And that was my first fight. So we had just recently sat down with Izzy, and he lost to Alex that night. And I knew what RC would be rooting for. And I'm like, fuck. I know it ain't me, like I ain't jinxing him, I hope not. But no, the atmosphere though, the fans and just the energy in there, man, I'm a fan. Like, I'm still trying to learn everything, but I can't wait to go to the next fight. And just because I said I probably somehow jinxed you on that last one, I won't go to this one.
You're good. No, man, there ain't no jinxes, man. It's just it's the way it's supposed to work out. And yeah, I mean, I've said this numerous times. My favorite way to fight was during COVID when there was nobody in the stands, and it was just me fighting a guy in a quiet arena. It brought me back
loud though, Mike. Mike,
dude,
every time y'all punched each
Madison
other,
Square
bro.
Garden is so loud, man.
And I'm talking about when you guys were fighting during COVID.
Oh
and
yeah,
it was empty.
Yeah.
Bro,
when you could actually hear the punches like that on TV from 1,000 miles away, yeah.
Is it like the bubble
in there?
It was like the bubble. But the thing is this though, every time they hit each other, you hear it. It almost sounds like it's magnified because no one was in there.
Yeah, because you had never listened to, you had never watched a fight, so your eyes were seeing a punch land that you've seen 1,000 times land on TV, but your ears were hearing something different because it was like a baseball bat hitting a quarter of a cow in a meat packing place, right?
Bro, I can't just listen what you just said. There's no way in the hell you can turn that switch on and off that easy. Because we just watched that Dustin fight. I watched it too. That was violent aggression towards another human being that I don't care what your score looks like at the end of this fight. And you can just turn that on when the cage opens, turn that off when the cage closes.
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I wrestled so many times, right? Like I wrestled hundreds and hundreds of wrestling matches. And it was kind of the same thing. There was a line here and a line there. And you're kind of just chilling and warming up, and you go up, you step on the line, you shake hands, and then it just goes into my hands are going to get on you and your hands are going to get on me, and whatever happens, happens. And it's obviously this is a little bit different because of the punches and the kicks and the knees and the elbows and the chokes and that kind of stuff, but it's just, it's so normal to me that it feels so natural. But I think also a little bit is that that animalistic instinct in there too, where we really are locked into a cage with another man trying to hurt us really badly. And if he has it his way, he's going to knock me out. If he has it his way, he's going to do as much damage as he possibly can. So I think part of that human spirit, human instinct, back a possum into a corner, he's going to come out fighting. And different guys have different styles. You bring up Izzy. Like Izzy's a very calculated, I don't have a calculated bone in my body, I don't think, in there sometimes. I don't think I've ever thought, what should I do right now? It's like, no, just go.
But if I walked up, if I walked up to you, you walking through Publix, pushing your cart, and if I walked up and grabbed you, how long would it take for you to snap back into that?
Well, like in a real life scenario.
I'm just saying, you in Publix, we walking through aisle 3, we buy the soup, and I come and grab your ass.
I think initially it would take me a couple seconds to realize, okay, am I in danger or am I not? Is this a friend that did I just accidentally beat up my high school teacher? Like he was just coming to say hi, or is it like, hey, me and my family are in trouble? Like,
it's a threat.
If I know it's a threat, yes. I mean, it literally instantaneous, I think.
And then how long would that take? Because listen.
2 to 3 seconds, probably. 2 to 3 seconds. No.
Yeah.
Mike, you gonna whoop me in 2 seconds?
No, maybe 4.
He's gonna scoop you so fast.
I'm just saying, but I'm behind him. I got him locked up.
No, I mean,
the man trains like that his whole life. That's what he lives for.
He's strong. It's true, man. It's pretty hard, dude.
Mike, he ain't working out. This is my question for you, bro. It seems like, right, they made a belt for humans like you. It's called the BMF. You've never fought for the BMF belt, but basically every fight you've had since becoming part of the UFC roster has been against that sort of fighter and style, and also in who they were when it came to violence. So let's say me and you get into it on the schoolyard, right? And I say, you know what? It's gonna be me and you, Mike, and I'm bringing 3 of my friends. If you got a chance to pick 3 other UFC fighters to bring to the fight with me, I guess I'm gonna bring Fred and Chan, and
You gonna bring me?
we'll bring Mike.
I'm gonna throw up quick.
So if you had the opportunity to pick 3 of the BMF sort of fighters to go to a street fight with you on the UFC roster, who would it be?
Well, I think first, you got to go with Max Holloway because he's got the belt right now. But I think the guy that he just beat, Justin Gaethje, I think Max did a great job tactically in that fight to make Justin Gaethje not look as much of the BMF that we know he is. Max is just a really, really great fighter. But I would go Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje, and even though Dustin Poirier doesn't like me, I don't know if he would be on my side on this one, but like in an alternate universe where he would stick up for me, I would go Dustin Poirier.
When you think about those 2 guys, because you've never fought Max, but what makes people like Dustin and Justin so dangerous? Because you went toe-to-toe with both of those dudes. You gave as good as you got. What makes them able to be violent in that manner and also get their hands raised at the end of the fights?
Man, I think they're just just that. They are violent, and I think they even get better as the violence starts to increase. I will say this. I would say from a tactical standpoint, Dustin Poirier is a more polished, more veteran thinking fighter than Gaethje, whether it be his processing inside there and he's able to navigate and negotiate distances, when to hold. But when I got Poirier up against the cage and I hit him with like 20 punches, he was completely cool doing the rope-a-dope, right? That's a veteran move. I'm not doing that. I don't think Gaethje would really do that either. I think Gaethje would just slug and try to move and slug.
Right.
So that's not to take anything against Gaethje, but I think they're guys that are kind of just cut from the same cloth as me. They don't necessarily. I think I want to be in the violence. I don't necessarily know that they want to be in the violence until it's time to get violent. And when they do, they are as violent as anybody, right? Both of those dudes have a switch that they flip, and they are phenomenal athletes.
You have that switch too. I'm way too scared to ever fight. My son actually wants to fight, which I've been trying to talk him out of. I'm gonna get you to call him and just tell him the downside. Don't tell him none of the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like, but we all have like that moment, right? Like I remember to this day watching Chuck beat Tito with the barrage against the cage was when I fell in love with the UFC. It's when I fell in love with mixed martial arts. And then came Anderson Silva and John Jones, and now they started to create superstars. What's the fight that Michael Chandler is watching and he says, I know exactly what I want to do with my life?
Man, I think, I was graduating college right about my senior year. I didn't think I was gonna do anything besides wrestle until I was my senior year of college, and Ben Askren had gone off and started fighting. Tyron Woodley went off and started fighting. And those guys were like my big brothers, my mentors in college. I wanted to be just like them. I didn't have a big brother, so they were kind of like the closest thing I had. So I started getting more interested in it, and that was at the time of BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, George St. Pierre. Watching Matt Hughes and George St. Pierre fight, watching BJ Penn and Matt Hughes fight. I remember the first ever, I think, it was Randy Couture versus somebody, and it was during the Mizzou wrestling camps over the summer that they bought the pay-per-view at the dorm rooms or something, and that was the first like real fight that I ever kind of got into after I started thinking about it. But the crazy thing is my college roommate, one of my favorite human beings on the entire planet, his name is Raymond Jordan. He had lost his mom and dad by the time he was 10 years old, got adopted by or taken in by his grandmother, and then she passes away a couple years later. I mean, the man had gone through it, and then was eventually taken in by another family on the wrestling team and kind of helped him get through it. He was a state champion from New Bern, North Carolina. He was my roommate in college, and he didn't have a car, but we had a Blockbuster about a quarter mile, half mile away, and he would go down there and he would pick up the DVDs and he would pick up the VHS tapes and he would watch them. And I would watch it every now and then out of the corner of my eye, or kind of see, oh, there goes Raymond watching Fedor Emelianenko versus Shogun Rua and Anderson Silva. He would watch all the Pride stuff and the old UFC stuff. But it wasn't really until my senior year and starting to see some of that. I think it was BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, George St. Pierre, and it was always George St. Pierre to me. I loved George St. Pierre and Randy Couture, not just because they were great fighters, but they were looked at differently because of the way that they operated and how they carried themselves. And probably similar to me, people want to say, I like my fighters a little bit more questionable, or I like my fighters a little bit more in this box, right? But they were just guys who were kind of steadfast and immovable. And when it came time to fight, they were there and they were putting on a great show.
Mike, because as you talk about the schematics of it, it's funny because we look at football in that way. And you were talking about how he was just blocking, and just listening to it is pretty cool. With you not fighting in a year plus, with Conor not fighting, 3?
3 years, yeah.
As you look at the schematics of this fight, the approaches to this fight, why is this fight going to be extremely exciting for me to spend my hard-earned money on so that you can get paid?
Yeah. I think, man, I mean, obviously the storylines are the storylines. We just got done talking about my resume, my body of work when it comes to me being one of the top most electrifying guys who ever steps inside the octagon. And it's not because I win every fight. It's not because I'm the most technical, but you will not see more heart on display inside of an octagon anywhere else in the entire world unless Michael Chandler is in there. On the other side of the octagon, you got Connor McGregor coming back. He's calling it the greatest comeback in combat sports history. There's been a bunch of ups and downs with it. We've got bad blood with the Ultimate Fighter. He is historically always a very exciting, explosive guy right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. I'm historically, not even historically, I promise you, I will be explosive and run toward the center of that octagon on June 29th, right when the fight starts. And you're going to see two guys who are going to get into a head-on collision car crash in the middle of T-Mobile Arena on June 29th. And may the best man win, and I got a sneaky suspicion I know who it is.
So we taking shots of McGregor whiskey or your tequila. I like Reposado.
Hiatus, we have a great Reposado.
Yeah?
Yeah, Hiatus tequila. I wish I had some here, but I'm in training camp, man.
Whenever, we'll get to it.
I know.
So what's the story behind why tequila?
Man, so tequila has been my drink of choice for about a decade now. And I really wanted to start my own tequila brand. My wife and I had talked about it for a while, and just the logistics behind it, how long it takes, all the R&D, research and development, getting the certification, all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up meeting the founder, his name is Christopher DeSoto, of Hiatus Tequila. And I sat down with him for a couple hours, and I realized the bottle is exactly what I would have wanted it to look like. It's nice and it's clean and it's minimalist. The juice, the actual tequila itself, is made the way tequila is supposed to be made. Not adding anything, no rectification process, additive free, and just his love for it. He's from Texas, but spent 8 years in Mexico, so he spent 8 years around the culture and really fell in love with that culture, and not just that culture, but the tequila making inside of the culture. So I feel like there's so many similarities between me and who I am and how I try to operate and how I try to do my thing called mixed martial arts and be a man, and then how Chris's vision was for Hiatus Tequila. And we're growing like crazy right now, and it's been really, really good, and it's tasty and delicious, and I will drink some on June 29th.
Does health guru, was it Gary Brecka?
Gary Brecka, yeah.
Does he approve of it?
You know, I haven't talked to him about that. I'm sure anybody would say. Yeah, he is. I'm sure he would say any alcohol isn't ideal for you, but there's a lot of things that we engage in that aren't ideal for us.
Hey, Mike, please don't come over here because I've seen you jump on people. I just got to ask. They have facelifts. They have BBLs. Drake gets his abs done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can do. Man, you can't restore those goddamn ears. Because there's something you can do with them ears.
Now, hey, I will say, I'm going to get this left one fixed on the inside when I'm done fighting. Because this one sticks out a little bit further than this one. And that, not only does it bother me, but I get ear infections every now and then because this one doesn't drain correctly. But
you can't.
No, my wife loves them. I actually talked to my wife about.
She doesn't love them.
I swear. Well, she says she loves them.
Because she loves you.
Exactly. But she says she loves them. That's all that matters. I'm like, babe, I think I'm going to get this ear fixed. She's like, no, don't get your ears fixed. I like your ears. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll keep them.
How do they fix them though, Mike?
Well, I think you would just kind of cut it and pull back the skin and then clear out some of the cauliflower. So essentially,
Scar tissue, right?
Yeah, the scar tissue. Yeah. So it's essentially you got the skin, and then you have cartilage on the inside, and then it just swells up with like fluid whenever you get hit on it repeatedly, and then it swells up really big, and then it kind of comes down and gets hard like this.
Man.
But no, I'm just, because they make people's booties up their back.
Yeah.
They could cut that out.
Oh yeah, I don't know if that's the same. We just slop them off and put 2 butt cheeks on my head. Is that what you want me to do? Hey, babe, I got a booty lift on my head.
You want the man to have 2 cheeks.
A BBL. Yeah.
The BBL. Yeah, 2 cheeks on side of it.
I traded my ears in for some butt cheeks.
This is going to be like the hardest transition I've ever had on the show. I have a question that I wanted to ask. In our sport, recently, Harrison Butker gives a speech. It's at a Catholic commencement, and he received a lot of backlash. He spoke a couple of weeks later, and he was like, I'm going to keep professing my faith. You have been publicly open about being a Christian. And you don't necessarily work in a world where we hear that a ton. I read something where you said, I feel like God has given me this platform not to be good, but to be great. What sort of responsibility do you feel to always profess the love of Christ as you continue to become more successful, gain more fame and popularity?
I think it's extremely important, but I also think I like to do it my way. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can do it, right? There's you got a guy like Tebow in football, right? All he talks about it, that is his message, and that's how he feels comfortable and feels the way that he is supposed to profess his faith, right? Whereas I am open about it, but I'm also not talking about it so much that it's every single thing goes back to it, right? Because I do believe, quoting the Bible, quoting the scripture, Paul said, I have become all things to all men so that I might win a few, right? So there is the guys who will constantly profess it, and then there are the guys who often just use how they live their life as a living testimony, right? It goes back to preach the gospel at all times, but only when necessary, use words, right? Yep. So obviously when it comes to the big things in life, I profess and proclaim that God has blessed me with those things when they are the impactful things, the overarching theme of my life, the successes and even the failures and the ups and the downs. But it's important for me because I really do have a great crowd of witnesses, and I have been given a great platform, and to shy away from it would be me bastardizing the blessings that I have, right? I think it's important, but I do it in my way, and to some people it might be a little bit too much, and to some people it might not be enough. But I love to just live my life and run my race and do what I feel comfortable putting my head on the pillow at night with how I'm operating, whether it be speaking at a church or whether it be going a month or 2 or 3 with doing interviews and not saying that I'm a Christian or talk about God whatsoever. Life ebbs and flows, right? So it's very important to me. It's my cornerstone of who I am and whose I am and how I've been able to build this life that I've been building for the last really 24 years. And I want to stay steadfast
That's
on it.
awesome, dog. That's awesome.
And with that, you've been in the sport over 24 years. You're 38 now. You got this big fight versus Conor. What are some of your future goals, post-fight, your future UFC goals post-fight, and plans for retirement? Have you thought that far?
No, I haven't. I know I don't have a ton of fights left in me. I think I could do it. I can definitely do it a lot longer than I will. I know that for sure. I know I will walk away from the sport with gas left in the tank and tread on the tires and the fans itching for me to get back in there. I know that for certain. But I don't know when that is going to be. But I do know that this is about to be the biggest fight and what I think is going to be the most masterful performance of my career. And we're going to have more after that. And then when I do hang the gloves up, I want to be doing things like this, having meaningful conversations, reaching the masses. I'd love to speak. I'd love to write books. I'd love to be on TV. I'd love to stay in the public eye, not for the vanity of it, but the impact of it. Right? I'm already where I am now, and I feel comfortable here. I do believe that I've been given a gift to be able to do that and impact as many people as I possibly can and make a living doing it. And I think changing lives through whatever I decide to do. Fitness will be part of it. Probably not mixed martial arts much. I'll always be known as the fighter, but I think the experiences that I've gleaned over these last 24 years of hand-to-hand combat are so similar to the struggles and the fights that everybody has to go through in life that we can create a platform where we can create a messaging that will impact people.
I wanted to ask, because we get asked this question a lot due to concussions and the history with the CTE and all that stuff, will we allow our children to play football? Will you allow Hap and Ace to participate in this?
Combat sports.
Combat sports, yes.
Yeah. I think my thought is it's not up to me. I think it's going to be what they are chosen to do, what they choose to do, and what they feel is right for them. Obviously, I think there's better ways to make a living than fighting in a cage, right? There's easier ways. There are safer and healthier ways. But being a guy who has made the life that I have created because of these hands in hand-to-hand combat, it's hard for me not to say that it's not been a huge blessing for me. That doesn't mean that they are going to follow in Dad's footsteps. I do think, we all talk about sports. You can get the discipline, the stick-to-itiveness, the ups and downs, the character building, team sports, individual sports, whatever it may be. My kids will do sports. I mean, I just got done telling you that they can do whatever they want. Now I'm telling you that they have to do sports. But I think, so I don't want to sound hypocritical, but I think we've got my son Hap in sports right now. My son Ace is already playing some sports with like a personal coach, like a one-on-one coach, just shooting the basketball around and playing just coordination and stuff. I think it's just, sports has been my life since I was 8 years old. And if they decide to fight, Bree is not going to like it, but I would support it. And I know Uncle Dana pretty well, so we can. There might be a little nepotism in there, so it'll be all right. He won't have to start at the bottom.
A little bit. So we always ask our guests, what was their biggest pivot? And it's the moment that had to happen for you to be where you are today.
Man, the craziest thing is the biggest pivot, and it's a crazy story for me. So it came off of a loss. I lost the title to a guy named Patricio Pitbull in Bellator. It was in Chicago, and I remember pulling up to the arena, and it was just an interesting fight week for a couple different reasons. There was this weird somber feeling in it for some reason. I have never really experienced that before, and I remember this distinct feeling that this might not end well, but this needs to happen. I remember getting to the arena, and we get our stuff in the locker room, and I call my wife because I had this vision of her sitting by herself at the edge of the bed, all by herself, and I could not think about anything else, and I don't understand why I was having this feeling like she was alone. So I call her, and I tell her, hey, where are you at? How, are you on the way to the arena? And she's like, yeah, I hitched a ride with Hans, hitched a ride with someone, and they were coming over, and I remember telling her, I said, hey, I just want you to know I love you, and I promise you that no matter what happens tonight, God's got us, and everything is going to be phenomenal for us. And she's like, okay, that's not exactly what you want to hear from your husband as he's about to go into a cage match. And we hang up, I go out there and I lose. I get stopped in the first round, hit behind the ear, and but had that fight not happened the way that it happened, I would have retained the belt. I would have been under contract with Bellator for numerous more title defenses, and I would not have been able to get out of my Bellator contract and fight out my Bellator contract to then knock out Benson Henderson, come over to the UFC, and do what we just talked about over the last 5 fights. And now sitting here on the cusp of fighting the sport's biggest star with the brightest lights and the biggest platform. That dream that I had at the very beginning of this thing, why I got into the sport, the brightest lights and the biggest platform and the biggest opponent, that does not happen unless that loss happens.
Wow.
Because of contractual issues. So once again, if a bad thing happens to you, but a good thing comes from it, was it really a bad thing? And I think that moment is the cornerstone for that saying that, yes, I still felt the pain, I still cried the tears, I still felt like a failure, I still felt all of the pain and all of the stuff I had to go through, but it was the greatest blessing of my career losing that fight.
Okay, I can't let you go without asking this. 13 seconds, Aldo, Eddie Alvarez, I was the biggest Conor fan, as many of us were in the UFC. And obviously just through watching you, getting to talk to you so many times, having a personal relationship, I'm like, MC's my guy. Tell me why the fans of the UFC, why friends like myself and people who cheer you on should believe that Michael Chandler gets his hand raised on June 29th in T-Mobile Arena.
I think from a sheer physicality standpoint, from a skill set standpoint, there's no way that I should lose to Connor McGregor. I'm better than him in every way. Aside from the puncher's chance, I beat him 10 times out of 10. With that being said, I do believe that Conor shows up. Conor shows up under the bright lights. He lives for these moments. But I do believe that there's 2 scenarios here, that Conor comes back and is successful and completes the greatest comeback in combat sports history, or I go out there and I absolutely dismantle him, and it's the last time that we ever see Connor McGregor compete inside of an octagon. So if there ever was a pay-per-view that people must buy, it has to be Conor McGregor's last fight, because I think that's going to be the outcome. I think I don't just get my hand raised, I don't just win. I think I put on a masterful performance, and I finally put some of the last brush strokes on this masterpiece that I've been painting for the last 24 years of hand-to-hand combat, and it had to happen this way. This is the way it was supposed to be, with all the doubts and all the fears and all the setbacks and all the naysayers and all the personal self-doubt that I've had. It had to happen this way. And it wasn't just gonna be big, it was gonna be astronomical. And this is exactly what I always asked for. And you're gonna see something different in me than you've ever seen before.
Okay, breaks out Fanatics Sportsbook app. And types in
I'm in.
Michael Chandler.
What's the betting line?
Yeah, that's what we about to find
The
out.
betting line these days.
Man. Nah, bro, man. Just honestly, bro, man, like this was, you know, for us, I am the biggest MMA fan of the crew, but they've gotten into it. Just a huge fan of yours, brother. And the fact that we got to do this, I knew it would be so much bigger than fighting, which was why it was important to me, man. So thank you for taking time during camp. I understand how important these moments are for you, but for us, man, this was huge.
Thank you, man. Thank you guys for having me, man. This is
dope.
a great opportunity to speak to a huge audience, and you guys are awesome. I watched the show, so thank you guys.
Appreciate you, my boy. Hey,
you, boss.
that boy so loud. Hell.
I got you, bro. Hey, come on.
That's what they do. Oh, man. Hey, by the pay-per-view. And here's the thing, though, too. You know, so Mike, though, he always has something for after the fight, though. Like he's always a step ahead. He's always a step ahead. So I already know. If
And
he
whatever
puts
I
him
say
out,
is
if he
gonna
puts him
happen,
down,
dude.
if he puts him down like that, oh, he got something. He the Ric Flair now. He's the Ric Flair
I got a couple
of the
things.
UFC now, bro.
I got a couple options. Keep my options open, you know?
Yeah.
I will get the Islam fight next, for sure. Or the BMF belt with Max.
That would be crazy.
Both will probably happen.
You get selfishly, I'd want to see you and Max, though.
Yeah, right.
Because I already know what it'll be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I already know.
Hold up, limitless. Niggas to me got pinning it. I fought the head to witness it. Got my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling got me up. On the mission got me up. Knowing me, I got the key. Only vision I can trust. Trust. Limitless. Niggas to me got pinning it. I fought the head to witness it. Got my people feeling militant. Way I'm feeling got me up.